Hi again. Sorry for the two videos. Um, I had a little bit of computer issues um, ending my first video, so I am continuing on here to cont- keep talking about the different things that I talked about in my um, research about this recipe and what I kind of covered in my paper. Um, so to speak a little bit on the cultural significance of pancakes and this recipe, uh, National Geographic has said that they believe that pancakes have been consumed for almost 30,000 years based on analysis of stones and rocks and tools that they have found starch material in, and they think that the grain was ground using them and turned into a cake type form and cooked. So kind of like a historical pancake, they were saying, and I found that really interesting. And in modern times, or more modern in American history, um, pancakes made their first appearance um, in the first All American kind of cookbook that came out in 1790s ish. Um, and it featured two recipes for pancake type dishes, one being Johnny Cakes, which uses cornmeal, and that was actually introduced to the early settlers um, by the Native Americans, which is pretty interesting. And then the other recipe, which is like a more traditional flour like pancake. Um, and I've actually had Johnny cakes before too, and they're pretty good, but it's very different when you're used to the super sweet and refined flour like taste of a normal pancake that you would have for breakfast. Um, so I think that definitely it's safe to say that pancakes that we eat nowadays are very different from what early Americans ate. Um, Even speaking to the fact that the pancakes that I ate growing up typically came from a box mix or something like that. Um, not even necessarily from scratch, with all of the various ingredients that are necessary and then are extra and can tend to be excessive. Um, but it is definitely a food, I think, that is a staple in the American diet, and it has significant, you know, um, meaning, you know, to our culture because of, you know, the weekend brunch is to, people love pancakes. Um, So then moving on to like kind of pulling it all together and how this recipe, is relevant to this class and everything that we've talked about this semester, I feel like it pretty much covered, looking back at the different topics that we've covered each week, it's pretty much covered everything that we've talked about, um, from the complexity of taste, because pancakes are sweet and a little salty with the butter or cooking oil, um, and just savory and comforting, and that the taste of a pancake um, just can bring back memories, and that kind of thing that we discussed. Just like I, saw the recipe and I thought about my childhood, and tasting a pancake, can make people think of different times when they've had it. It's a very, significant and familiar flavor to people. Um, I also feel like it directly can, I mean, it is a recipe modification from the original recipe, because the one that I chose to make does not have eggs or any animal products in it. Um, it had to be considered by the person creating the recipe. How do we still make this pancake edible, functional, taste good, and not too drastically different, so that people will want to try it, and they'll find it enjoyable. Um, and with that being said, that takes into consideration the function of the ingredients, um, and how to substitute out things appropriately, and then also um, touching on when we're discussing the industrialization of food, um, to think that the original pancakes were made with just ground grain and water made into cakes, and now you can buy a box mix and just add water. Um, it is clearly demonstrates how industry, and has taken over so many things, and tried to make things easier for the public, but taken away that involvement of making a recipe like this from scratch. So that's something else that I do really like about this recipe, because it's all single ingredients combined to create the finished product. Um, and then finally, it touches on the alternative food movement discussion that we had, just about the ingredients that are being substituted in for the ones taken out, are not necessarily regular ingredients that everyone has used before, or all the time, or even maybe heard of. Um, because this recipe includes coconut oil rather than, vegetable canola or butter. Um, and it, also calls for plant-based milk, not dairy. And the recipe even suggests like rice milk, where I feel like that is even less common than almond milk or soy milk. So it's definitely, representative of the alternative food movement, and I'm actually surprised that um, it it includes all-purpose flour, because I would imagine that they would, want some kind of gluten-free option with, almond flour or something. And so that might be even, a further modification to make for people with, different dietary choices and restrictions. But in summary, this recipe is delicious. I highly recommend it, and suggest that you make them and enjoy. And I know that you'll enjoy them, because they're so good. Um, and again, I hope you guys have a great class, and it had a wonderful semester. And I look forward to seeing you all soon.